So last time we were seeing Savitri in her house of meditation where the yajna of cosmic creation was going on. Ishvara and Ishwari offering ahuti to the transcendental God, to the Supreme. Savitri was at a dead end. There was a deadlock between her dialogue with death, and things could not proceed further. But the moment the yajna was kindled in her soul, things suddenly took a different turn. Savitri became the leader of the procession. Savitri in front, behind her the spirit of Satyavan, and behind him death. She became the leader. She had now absolute control over all the movements, and she could do what she wanted to do. That was the power of yajna which she has received. So now, with that power, she has to fight out the last battle with death, with Yama. So today we'll take just small portion of that. Yama is still insisting, no, Savitri, you cannot do these things. You cannot do these things. It is impossible. I am the Lord. I am the Master. I am the Creator. You can't flaunt my laws. You can't disobey me. My command is absolute and things will happen according to my will. He is insisting on that. So he is arguing with Savitri in a very, very strong voice. Once more arose the great destroying voice, the voice of Yama, of death. Across the fruitless labor of the world, Savitri is arguing, she is not getting the fruit of her labor. The world is moving on, the cycles are rolling on, time is not getting its fruit. The activities of the world are not getting their fruit. His huge denials all defeating might. He is the one who says no, no, no. He is the denier, the great denier, and he will oppose any move which takes things towards the divine. That is his role in a way. His huge denials all defeating might pursue the ignorant march of dolorous time. The time itself is under his sway, and he is under the control of all the activities of time, all the moments, all the rhythms. Whatever is going to happen in time, he is going to decide their fate, their sequence. He says to Savitri, behold the figures of the symbol realm. He shows this whole universe to her, his world, where Savitri has entered in. He is showing her all those things. Behold the figures of the symbol realm, its solid outlines of creative dream, inspiring the great concrete task of human life, of tasks of earth. In its motion parable of human life, here thou canst trance the outcome nature gives. To the sin of being and the error in things, the fact that you are existing, that itself is a sin. The way that you are living, that itself is an error. You are not committing the error. You have entered into error. You have entered into a place which is sin only. And the sin of being and the error in things and the desire that compels to live and man's incurable melody of hope in spite of all these harsh circumstances, all these difficulties, all the denials, still there is in the soul of man a small hope. He expects that things might change, things will improve. they will take a different turn. He has that expectation. He has that hope. And man's incurable melody of hope, that itself is a melody. He does not realize that itself is a melody. In an immutable order's hierarchy, where nature changes not, nature is bound by its law. Nature has formed fixed habits, and according to death, habit cannot be changed. Habits are formed, habits cannot be changed. In fact, death itself is a habit. We die because it is our habit to die. We die because it is our habit to die. And it is that which nobody can change. Where nature changes not, man cannot change. If nature itself is determined in that manner, is fixed in that manner, that is the role of nature, fixed in habit and behavior and character. And if man is governed by nature, how do we expect man to change then? If nature cannot be changed, it is impossible to think of changing man, because man is a creature of nature, he is a product of nature, he is governed by nature. Ever he obeys her fixed mutations in law. This is what man is. He is helpless. He has to follow the law governing nature. Mutation. It is not that he is going in a sequential manner from one grade to the other grade. It is not evolution. It is a sudden change. This, it keeps on happening. Mutation, which cannot be predicted. How it happens, that also he doesn't know. Mutations law in a new version of a soft, oft-told tale, in ever-varying cycles, turns the race. So we are caught in a race, and the cycle is repeating again and again the same birth, death, life, birth, death, like it keeps on happening continuously, and we are caught in that. That is our habit. We are governed by that mode of nature, by that habit of nature. And therefore, Yama is telling Savitri, look, this is the condition, and you want things to change. Impossible. You are living in a very peculiar kind of a world. You have very different type of ideas which are not real, which have no foundation, which have no basis, which cannot be sustained by nature here. In a new version of her oft-told tale, in ever-wailing cycles turn the race, his mind is spent in circling boundaries, for mind is man. Beyond thought, he cannot soar. That is the best man can attain. He is a mental being. He belongs to the category of mental being. He is the product of Manomaya Purusha. And how do we expect this man, belonging to Manomaya Purusha category, to exceed what is beyond it? It's impossible. That is the ceiling for man. His mind is man, for mind is man, beyond thought, he cannot soar. That is his fate, he is locked in that. If he could leave his limits, he would be safe. Unfortunately, it is impossible for him to go beyond this limit of the Manomaya Purusha. If it were possible for him to do, he would be safe and things might change. But that is not the thing which can happen now. He sees but cannot mount to his greater heavens. Even when he sinks back to his native soil. You try to climb up, go up, up, up. You might take the highest flight. Ultimately, you come back to the earth. You are helpless. You are coming back to the earth, and that is the best that can happen to man. He may be able to soar into very high skies, but ultimately he has to come back on the ground, on the soil. He is a captive in his net of mind, and beats soul wings against the walls of life. In vain his heart lifts up its yearning prayer, peopling with brilliant gods the formless void. Then, disappointed to the void, he turns, and in its happy nothingness asks release, the calm nirvana of his dream of self. Ultimately, what is the solution for him? Walk away from this creation. Go away from this creation. Call it illusion, call it maya, call it mithya, false, etc., whatever you want to call it. Get out of it. A world full of sorrow, dukkha maya. This is the world here, full of sorrow. You walk away from here and go and live elsewhere in the immortality. That is what the best, that is the best that can happen to him. The calm nirvana, that is what he can dream of. Apart amid the mortal multitudes, he caused the Godhead incommunicable to be the lover of his lonely soul, or cast his spirit into his void embrace, or he finds his copy in the impartial all. He imparts to the immobile his own will, attributes to the eternal wrath and love, and to the ineffable lends 1,000 names, one who cannot be expressed, who is avyakta, who is beyond speech, beyond expression. You may give 1,000 names, this, but it is useless. Hope not to call God down into his life. Now that is the ultimate. Savitri, you are trying something foolish, something absurd, something which is not natural. You want to bring down those gods into life? Impossible. Go away, walk back to your place and live merrily there, happily. That is what he is trying to say. In other words, Savitri, according to Yama, has to return without claiming the soul of Satyavan back. Satyavan's soul is now with me. It cannot go back. You are the creature of this world. Go back. One day you will also come to me. But today now you go back. Don't claim Satyavan. And under these conditions, you want gods to come down here and live in this life. Impossible. You are trying something which is absurd, which is not natural, which is not in the course of things at all here. I am the Lord governing everything. This is what Yama is effectively telling Savitri. Not only effectively, very forcefully, very emphatically asserting his law in the creation. This is what he is telling Savitri. So, Savitri sees a great difficulty, and yet she has to get the soul of Satyavan back, of course. Now, the question which is important to ask is, who is this death? Who is telling Savitri, look, everything is governed by me. I am the creator of this world. Everything is ruled by me in this mortal world. I am the Lord of the mortal world, of the Mrityu Loka. I am the king, and you cannot disobey me. So who is this death? That is the question. Who is death? Now, the mother says something very interesting. The mother says that according to Sri Aurobindo, it is death who comes first, and then comes falsehood. What he is speaking is falsehood. Death is speaking falsehood. So it is death who comes first, and falsehood comes as a result of the presence of death. But she says that Theon, from whom she learned occultism in the early days, 1905, 1906, 1907, around that time, Thion used to tell her that it is from falsehood has come death. Means falsehood is the father of death. In Savitri, in Sri, it is death who is the creator of falsehood. He is giving a picture to you, life, forget about God's coming. That is falsehood according to you. That is the falsehood. So it is death who is insisting upon this kind of a logic, on falsehood. He is the creator of falsehood according to Savitri, according to Sri Aurobindo. According to Thion, it is falsehood who has created death. Now, which is true? Of course, we'll immediately say, yes, Sri Aurobindo must be right. It is death who must have created falsehood. Now, there is also an element of truth in what Thion had described as the process of creation. That the four powers separated from the supreme origin and became their opposites. He says, truth became falsehood, life became death, bliss became suffering, and consciousness became unconsciousness. So these four powers, consciousness, truth, bliss, life, they became opposite. So it is truth which became falsehood. It is life which became death. It is consciousness which became unconscious. It is bliss which became pain and suffering. Now therefore, is it that falsehood who is speaking to Savitri here? That truth which has become falsehood? Is it that truth which is speaking here? Or is it life which became death who is speaking here? That is the question. Now, if you go by Savitri, the answer is very clear. The answer is, the story of creation is an aspect of a narration. It is depicting, presenting a certain process of development, of evolution, of the Supreme turning into its opposite. The Supreme emptying himself into void. That is what the story of creation basically means. And in that story, these things are happening. But ultimately what happens? Ultimately it is the Supreme who becomes the void. And it is from that void death arises. A death which we have got here in Savitri is that death. Death is arising out of the total absence of the Supreme in this creation. The Supreme has become void, and as a kind of a first movement, out of that void sprang up death when life tried to enter into it. When life tried to enter into this void, then sprang up from this void death. So it is in that connection that you can say that it is life which has kind of prompted the void to bring out death. So death is a response of the void to the entry of life into the creation. And it is that void which is, you can say, the womb, the father, the creator of death. And it is that death who is speaking all this to Savitri. So falsehood, therefore, is a product, is an expression of death. Death is not the expression of falsehood. It is the falsehood which is the expression of death. because it has come out from the total void of the Supreme, and death is there. In fact, later on, when Savitri wins victory over this death, when Savitri wins victory over this death, where does that death go? He is an immortal. He cannot be just killed and vanished like that. He has to go somewhere. He returns into the void from which he had come. When Savitri wins victory over death, then death returns into the void from which he had come. In other words, he is absorbed into the void. And then what happens? It is the true death who is seen by Savitri. Savitri now passes to that void, and it is not that death who was talking to him about all these things who is present there. But behind that void, who had projected this death in front of her, behind that void is the Supreme Himself present in a different form. The void who had given rise to that death now shows another form of death, the true form of death. The Supreme Himself, even behind this void, even behind this death. And it is that new form of the death. The Supreme Himself, the Transcendent Himself, which is now revealed to Savitri, which is standing in front of her now to give boons, gives the boons to her. And ultimately, from that transformed death, Savitri gets the boon of Krishna and Kali coming to the earth. So, it is not falsehood who has created death. It is the void which had projected death in response to the entry of life is death. And it is that death who is challenging Savitri. When Savitri removes that death, then the true form of death, of true Yama, Vivasvana, the true Surya, the true sun who is behind him is shown up. So that is the mystery of the whole thing, and that is a revelation which is given to us only in Savitri. It is not present anywhere else at all. In none of the ancient writings, in none of the traditions, perhaps not even in other works of Sri Aurobindo. It is only in Savitri we see the true nature of void, on one side projecting death as a challenge to life, but when transformed, the true Supreme Himself present there, giving the boon of Krishna and Kali. I think we'll stop with that.